Hello and welcome to HolisticCircle podcast, Spiritual Conversation. My name is Philipp Kobald. We are reaching out to people who are passionate about spreading light, love, and joy. And from outside of Toronto, from beautiful Canada, Carmen Theobald. Hello, Carmen.
Hello, Philip. I'm so happy to be here.
I usually start the podcast with giving my guests a small chance of a small introduction to get a bit of a background so people get to know you. And, we'll take it from there.
That sounds great. So you want me to kind of give my own little background intro?
Sure. Just as people a little bit get the ball rolling, who you are, what you do, and then the smart questions will follow.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me. And my background is a little bit varied, and it also includes a story that I'm not going to go into too much detail about, but it's a really important piece as to why I'm where I am today. I grew up in Montreal. I was studying social services at Dawson College, and there was a traumatic event that took place while I was there. And this part, I'm not going to go into great detail, but just for your listeners to know, so they have a little warning that could be activating. So while I was at Dawson, there was a school shooting that took place. And I really believed that I was going to die that day. But I didn't. And there was first responders and specifically police who very courageously got me out of that situation. And I remember walking outside and the sunshine hit my face. And I took a deep breath and I realized that I was actually able to keep living this life. When I really believed moments ago that was the last breaths I was taking. And that completely changed everything moving forward for me. It really dialed up the courage that I was able to access in all parts of my life. It really kind of changed my perspective on what was important and what wasn't. And it led me on a winding path to end up working with horses. I left Montreal. I went to work and volunteer on a farm. And I worked with horses there very intensively. And then I was offered an apprenticeship as a farrier. So that's a person who takes care of horses' hooves. And I ended up working with thousands of horses in that capacity. So like an unofficial foot doctor for horses. So we're, again, very intensive learning with horses in all kinds of scenarios and all kinds of environments. And what was happening is that I was really learning about healing. I was learning about relationships, learning how to be with horses in a way that was safe for them and for me, that was effective, and that was really about becoming more truly who I was and releasing a lot of the things that were hiding that. And this is a bit of a long story, but I'll wrap it up. The experience I started with at Dawson College was really important to share because when I left Montreal, I really thought I was leaving the world of humans behind. And I did. I ended up working with so many horses. But what happened is they brought me back around, almost like in a horseshoe, back around to the world of people, because as I was learning and healing and growing so much, I needed to find a way to reconnect to my roots in social services and go back to the world of humans where I could have horse partners now, not doing it just as a human, but lean into how can I help people again? How can I help people with horses and bridge these two worlds of horses and humans? So 10 years ago, I became certified as a coach and facilitator for this kind of learning and healing work with horses. And I started Horse Sense North. So I'm the founder and director of Horse Sense North. We've been working with people and horses for quite a while. And we evolved into primarily serving those who serve others. So working with first responders, working with public safety personnel. And that's because of my experiences. I wouldn't be alive today without first responders. And it feels incredibly important for me in this work that I do with people and horses to lean into that population, to give back to the people who saved my life, but also who are there for our communities in so many different ways. So that's me.
It's always good to start light. And then later we get serious. So I don't know.
I'll beat you to the punch then.
Well, Well, first of all, I think we should tell the viewers that you're not only living like outside of Montreal, but you live on a farm, like on a really beautiful farm with animals, I think 5 horses. And I think so people should know it looks like a very urban background in your room inside the farm, but actually is it a little bit like excluded, or is there like a lot of farms around? Can you just give us a couple of minutes so we can inhale after this information and just be on the farm?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, my partner and I, we have 88 acres on a beautiful landscape that is like open fields with forests in the background. There are 5 horses on the farm. There's lakes and like it's like cottage country around here. And it's also really important to note that this is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg and Mississauga nations, part of Robinson Huron Treaty 61. And we would not be here today if it weren't for the atrocities that took place in our history. So we're learning more and more about what that really means to be here on this land and how to be, better stewards, but also more importantly, recognize the history that led us here and try to turn that into action and really take it into our hearts. So this incredible place that we live on has, although a complicated and painful history, it's also a healing partner in the work that we do. So this land really is magnificent. I have so many people tell us that as they arrive, even just starting to drive down the road, it's like they feel changed in their body. Like they already sense this release of anxiety, or maybe even a little bit of nerves. Oh my gosh, but they come and they land and there's a palpable different feeling when you set foot on the farm.
Just pure curiosity for me. And those people who come for the workshops, they stay in hotels nearby. You have hot huts or something like that, or?
So we do have a partnership with a couple of different hotels.
Nice.
We don't have accommodations on site yet, but we do. That's a hope. That's our vision. We'll see what happens. But yeah, we have some wonderful little towns nearby and they have some hotels and there's lots of good places to eat. But then when people are actually on site for our full day programs, my partner is a chef and caterer. So we have a lot of delicious meals he prepares, but he's also a farmer. So he's got a super green thumb. A lot of the food is either from our farm or local farms. There's a lot of natural landscape and other food growers around the area. So we have some nice relationships with them as well.
I feel the need to stop the podcast right now because some stories are too horrible to listen. They need a warning. And some stories are too good to listen. They need a warning as well. I think half the people will be in deep depression at the end of this conversation. Why don't I have that life? And I'm one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel incredibly privileged to be doing what I'm doing and be where I am for sure. And it's also a huge amount of work and it's been feeling like insurmountable tasks to get here. And sometimes the days, although I can always take a stop and take in the beauty, it can be also a grind and it can be really depleting and really hard. So I think no matter what life we're living, there's always challenges. And I never want to make it seem like this one is all sunshine and rainbows. And I don't think anyone's journey is. And I really recognize the privilege of it too.
Okay, let's pretend there's some salt into it. So, all right, I can see you're a therapist. Otherwise, there's like an emergency if you continue having it. All right, okay, I'll get it back together. Now, the first thing, because there's so many subjects already that you brought up, but I think I'm wondering, just give me your own personal take. Why is there such a connection throughout history, man and horse? But for you, what is the secret with this animal that makes it so special for humans, or why we have the special connections? What would be your answer to that?
Well, I would first start by saying that we've evolved with horses for thousands and thousands, if not longer, years. There are depictions of people and horses hundreds of thousands of years ago in places all over the world. And We've also evolved with them more in our colonized times where, or part of colonization where they have really carried us on their backs into war across large territories. Really, so much of the way that our world looks today wouldn't look that way if it weren't for our relationship with horses. But there's more to it than them just being transport or being vehicles to war. They really are, with such a rich history in many Indigenous communities worldwide, of being these remarkable teachers, healers, and even spiritual guides for people, where people really looked to them to both build their own abilities and lean into their gifts, but also to look to them for wisdom and guidance. So where we're at today with horses, there's a history of that, whether we're conscious of it or not, where we have had these parallel tracks of evolving together for a very long time. And what I'm so grateful for in this moment is that there are many more opportunities for people to start to see horses beyond a tool, or beyond, even if they're not seeing them as a tool, a being, but just for riding, where they have so much more to offer. Because I think that this is a time where humans were meant to be evolving quickly. And the horses are some wonderful teachers to help us do that evolution now in a different way, new way, but also a remembering way, where it's from many generations and years ago when they were actually seen as the spiritual healers and teachers that they are. So I think we're kind of coming back to that, and I feel very hopeful about that, both for our relationship with horses, but also for our world at large.
Right. So the question is also, do you think that horses somehow better understand us or can read our intention better than other animals, or it's just within their nature to be part of a group? Or can you a little bit see if there are some secrets you can tell us what makes this animal better understand us than other animals?
Sure. I don't know if I would say that they always better understand us. I think, for example, our relationship with dogs and cats, like all animals that we might be interacting with, even the animal, I think most animals understand us better than we understand ourselves. However, that said, I think that horses have a unique way of helping us learn about ourselves. In that, first of all, they're not predator animals, right? They're non-predatory, they're prey. So the way that they interact with us is going to be very different than a cat or a dog. And as humans, we're omnivores. We're both predator and prey. We have both of these sides in us. We often in our societies, especially these days, lean heavier on the predator side, with the eyes in front of our head, very laser focused, very goal oriented, really sometimes justifying some of the behavior, especially if you're looking at the political scene or looking at people trying to justify some power over tactics, where it's very, I have a goal, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get my needs met. Versus non-predatory aspects, that kind of like other kind of power that we hold, that is more connected to the horses, that is more community oriented, that is more about vulnerability, that is more about, if we want to think about it like yin and yang, it's a bit more on that yin side of things. Where the horses really help us learn to have a wider view. So even just thinking about location of the eyes, right? Our eyes are in front of our head. Their eyes are on the sides of their head. So with their eyes on the sides of their head, they're looking at the world very differently than we are. And they actually have almost a 360-degree vision around them. They have a little blind spot in front of their face and a little blind spot behind their tail, but really they can almost see all the way around just by a slight tilt of their head. Very slight tilt. They really have all the way around view. We can learn a lot from that. How can we shift from this laser focus to this wide view? We can also learn from them in that they really are, in a healthy herd, learning how to use their power for the good of the herd, where they really come together for everyone's well-being. And I think as humans, we often struggle with that. Sometimes not. There's beautiful examples of us doing it, but also there's examples of us very much not doing that. So how can we come together more for the good of the herd?
Do the horses see us as bosses, as colleagues, family members, or just some other kind of animals they're interacting with? What would be your impression?
So it's going to really depend. One of the beautiful things about animals in general, and then horses, because of their nature as prey animals, they are so tuned in to seeing behind the mask that we wear. They really see our authentic nature, whether we're showing it on the surface or not. And so if we're armoring up, we're masking up, and we're like, I'm fine, everything's fine, they're going to see right through that, and they're going to respond to the truth, or at least to the sensation that something's incongruent, we're not matching. Our outside and our inside's not matching. So the way that they see us is going to completely depend on what relationship we have with them. Some people and some horses have where the horses will really see them as a leader, as the one who's more in charge. That doesn't necessarily mean it's in charge in a bad way. It's just I'm so relieved that you're leading me to a safer way of being right now. That you're leading me to feel more relaxed in my environment. That you're leading me in a way where I'm not so responsible to look out for my own safety. I can trust that you've got it. Some people, they see them as more of a boss, if you will. I'll make a distinction between leader and boss, where maybe they can trust that the person is a little bit more in charge. They're very clear, but maybe they're not actually very kind. And so they're going to know that they have to do what this person's telling them, but they don't actually feel that safe. They don't actually feel that relaxed. Other people, they may not see them as any kind of leader or boss, and depending on the horse, they're going to respond to that differently. So sometimes if a person is very subdued or maybe a very anxious person, the horse, depending on the horse, like some of our herd members, might actually try to help that person, might actually try to help them calm, help them regulate, help them feel like they're okay, like the horse can be the leader, that the human doesn't have to be the leader, the horse can be the leader. And other horses are going to be stressed by that because they're like, wait, I need a leader. I need you to be different because otherwise now I'm stressed that I'm all responsible and I'm all alone. So just like our human relationships, they're all going to be different because we're different people. Our relationships with horses are going to be different because we're different people and they're different horses. Even on the day, depending on the day, it's going to look a little different. So I'd say, how are they responding to us? They're just responding to us very honestly, very authentically, and they're not trying to hide what they're feeling.
I think that from the little time I spend with horses, I can really relate to what you said so well now, that this makes a lot of sense from the practice, the little practice that I have, that they are definitely their own person and they interact really different with everyone. I think that's a very good way to put it. So this is an interesting start because now you already basically answered the whole rest of the podcast, why they can help us, why they can therapy us, why we benefit to work with them, because we get a mirror, like an honest mirror, an honest response, something that we might not get or expect or accept from another human. Is that all right, like the end of the podcast?
There's a lot more we could talk about, but sure. Yeah, you got it, Philip. Nailed it.
Is that the secret of the healing power? Would you say that's it?
That's a piece of it. Okay. I think there's a lot of pieces, but to really boil it down, that's for sure part of it. The other piece is that it's not just about a mirror, an honest mirror for us. It's also like, how do we then learn what to do with that information? So it's, okay, now I'm having this honest mirror response from this horse. And sometimes it's a mirror, sometimes it's not, right? Maybe they're responding in a way that has nothing to do with us because they heard something out in the field and they're not necessarily leaning on us for safety. They don't see us as a leader, but now it's not our fault that they're like maybe having a stress response, but how do we then help them shift it? Or maybe they're showing us something in that interaction where, like you say, it could be hard to take or it could be hard to integrate. So what do we do with that learning when they're like, I don't actually want you near me right now because you're approaching me in this way where your intentions are not clear, where you sound, I'll give an example to put this more in context. Let's say we have a client who comes and works with our horses. And just for people to visualize, we have a round pen, there's no fencing, there's no halter on the horse, there's no lead rope. So there's an enclosure, but the horse is not being forced to be anywhere. The horse has their full voice and choice of where and how to be in that space with the person, of course, safely. We make sure that's always the number one piece. Our horses are very well, I'll say trained, but really it's just that they've done a lot of their own healing and they have a lot of trust with me. that they don't need to scream their answers. If they're upset about something, they're going to give a lot of cues and let me know in a safe, respectful way. So we don't have to worry about people getting hurt with the horses in that sense. But nonetheless, they're really able to move around in whatever way that they feel they need to. We're not like saying, okay, we're just taking you through an obstacle course and then we did it or we didn't do it. It's much more relational. And so let's say we have a person come and they're working with a horse in this space. And the horse is saying hello to them and they're having this little interaction. And then all of a sudden the horse walks away. There's a lot of reasons why that horse might walk away. The horse might have picked up something energetically and now it's going to go release it by walking and then come right back. But it could also be that the horse sensed that there's a shift in the person, and that person who initially started off in a very authentic, oh, hello, I'm so excited, I'm here, I'm meeting you. But then that person started having self-doubts. Then that person started having this like negative self-talk. But then not wanting to show that, not wanting to be like, ooh, oh my gosh, I'm actually having all of these feelings come up. We try to kind of fake it. There's a lot of faking it that we do in this world as humans. We mask up. It's, oh no, I'm fine. I'm just here. I'm confident, when we're not actually feeling that way. And so the person might be wanting to pet the horse or be near the horse, and the horse says, no, you don't feel right anymore. So it's not a judgment. There's no judgment, but the horse is mirroring that this person is maybe suppressing a feeling or masking a feeling in some way. And so the horse is walking away. What do we do with that information? And that's where it's more than just the mirror, because that's the mirror, right? The horse shows us what's going on. We can choose to take that information as like harsh and judgmental and we're bad, we're wrong, all of these terrible ways to feel. Or we can learn to take that information as good to know. Okay, that they're helping me understand this. And can I cultivate compassion for myself? And can I really lean into the opportunity that is the next moment? So in this moment that the horse just responded to, I wasn't necessarily being my authentic self. But next moment, I have another opportunity to be. And then moment after that, and the moment after that, and the moment after that. And as soon as people do a little internal shift, have a deeper breath, make a little bit more space inside of themselves with not only their thoughts, but the way that we feel our body, the way that we sense who we are. Even if there's no words in our head, there's that feeling of contraction or expansion in our body. I don't know if that resonates or might land for you or anyone listening, but there's always that feeling of contraction or more spaciousness or expansion. And when there's a little more spaciousness, every time the horses shift, they show some instant feedback, another mirror. But now we're learning how to move through the information that we were getting from before. And now there's another opportunity. They shift, they notice there's more spaciousness. Now what do we do with that? Sometimes people are like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And then they hold their breath because now it's like something good happened. That's scary, right? Or maybe the horse really looked into their soul and that felt amazing. But then there's some grief because maybe we haven't really felt seen in a very long time or ever. And so there's just a continuous relational healing process that happens when we're in these very honest interactions, where we're also learning to strengthen our ability to hold vulnerability. Because ultimately that's very vulnerable to go through this. So can we learn how to hold this vulnerability so that it's okay to keep going and keep doing the learning and keep our breathing there and keep that sense of calm in our body and notice when we're not and have that not be a problem, that it's just information, it's just good to know. And then what do we do with that information? And then the next moment, always a new opportunity.
Well, what I was trying is to figure out what is this trigger for healing, right? So what is this trigger that makes the force healing so unique or specific or different than other forms of healing? And that's why I imagine that this kind of honest response, so let's not say mirror, let's say this honesty in the interaction is something, as you explained, it's hard for us to deal. It's hard for us to deal with happiness and kindness it's hard for us to deal if somebody says, no, now you're just pretending. And in our everyday life, we hardly have solutions for these kind of honesty. People just don't look in your face. Oh, no, you lie. Come back later when you're honest again. It's, is this what you think, try it one more time, is this what you think is the core of the healing power of the horse? Or is it just the whole thing itself and it can't be put on one specific layer? It's just the whole experience. It's the horse, it's the animal, it's the farm, it's everything. It's the interaction. That's it. There's a whole package. And me as well as a therapist. That's it. So drop the point. It's not the response. That's the magics. And it's the whole everything.
Yeah, I would say that it's really the whole everything. There's also some really interesting physiological components. So there's some neat research that shows that even just being in the vicinity of horses, not even interacting with them, our heart starts to change how it functions. So I'll geek out briefly for a second here. When our hearts have 3 different frequencies that they operate at: high frequency, low frequency, and very low frequency. And the very low frequency, it really helps us to prevent heart attack. It really helps us to move through and heal stresses. There's connections there with PTSI and post-traumatic stress injury, that kind of thing, where that very low frequency helps us do the healing and also helps us reduce inflammation. Like, there's a lot of really positive health benefits. As humans, we spend very little time in the very low frequency. Horses spend most of their time in the very low frequency. Their hearts are also huge compared to ours, or 8 to 10 times the size of ours, sometimes bigger. And so with some neat research that has been done and continues, there's a lot more out there. This is just one example. Just by being in their vicinity, that very low frequency that they are most of the time in with their very large hearts, it's almost like that's contagious for us. And so it starts to literally shift how our heart is working. We can almost think of it like it's taking some of the armor off of our heart so it can have a little bit more space. So, there's that without even doing any of the work that we just talked about. And then being on the land, we know that there's lots of research now around being in nature and how that helps us and heals us. There's so much to be said around being in an environment where there's people who are skilled at creating a protected space. So yes, in nature, yes, with horses, but making sure that people aren't messing that up in the sense that I'm not showing up trying to be something I'm not, where I'm really welcoming and really warm. And the therapists that I work with and myself, we all have a very good relationship. So we can create this kind of bubble of protection for people to be here and learn to just be, whether it's on the land, with people, with horses, all of the above. So everything counts. I think as people too, we often feel like we're looking for the one thing in us. If I just fix this one thing, if I just change this other thing, if it's this one quality that I have is a really good quality. We're whole beings. We're complex whole beings, and all of it has importance. All of it matters, and we can't say that one quality is better or worse than another. They're all meant to be held with love and compassion. So, I love that this is our conversation. It's the same kind of thing.
So then let's not forget the wonderful lunch that your husband will provide. Because that's just the point I'm waiting for already.
For real. You're so right, Philip. I've had so many people say to us that like the program or the workshop, the experience was amazing. Like they're going on about all these different life-changing things. But then they'll say, but the food. We have these programs for first responders. And by the end of the week, Aquila, my partner, he's absolutely everyone's favorite person because it's lunchtime. They're like, it's lunchtime. And he always brings delicious, healthy, and wonderful food for everybody. So yeah, you're so right.
You're a classic submarine there.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yes. You see, I have spiritually already arrived in your course.
Yeah, I love it.
Right. So you pointed out to me as a holistic healer that I should believe in holistic therapy. I have a podcast that's called Holistic. So maybe I should listen to the headline of my podcast. Thank you. That was a good safety tip.
I'm so glad.
All right. Okay, so you're consciously creating a holistic environment. You have these amazing animals who work with you. You work with them. It's a lunch break. The land, the history of the land, the good and the bad is all there in the vibrations. But we understand now why all of this is working. We understand the value you brought us there. But now we need to go to the next step and ask you. You work, of course, throughout your personal history with a specific group of people. But let's now a little bit talk about why people from this background need it so much and why this seemed to be such a good way for them to do it.
Oh, I love this question. Of course, it's going to still vary person to person, but generally speaking, and this is actually very connected to what we were just saying too around the holistic aspect of work with horses. One of the ways that horses help us embrace the wholeness of who we are is that they really want us to be both powerful and gentle at the same time, because that's really what they are. They're incredibly deeply feeling beings. They're highly emotional beings, but they're also very powerful. A horse, if we just imagine a big 1,000-pound, 1,500-pound horse, that's a big, powerful being. But they also have these massive hearts, and they're so always communicating on this like sensitive level, really tuned in, really aware of emotion, all that kind of stuff. So they want us to really be the same. And we really benefit when we can do that too. When we can have this ability to keep our heart open, where we're not armoring up, but we're not losing contact with our strength either. We're not sacrificing our softness for our strength, and we're not sacrificing our strength for our softness. And it's not about being one and then the other. It's actually learning how to be both at the same time, because that's about being whole, where we can actually be all of those together, that paradox. So I'm starting off by answering your question with that, because for first responders, public safety, I think one of the challenges that this community can have is that their jobs ask them to be so strong so often. And often these people are also very naturally strong going into it. Like they pick the career for a reason, and then the career really doubles down on that need for them to be very, sometimes in charge, very strong, very capable of holding so much a day after day. And sometimes when there's other forms of healing or therapy that are too soft and woo, or just inviting too much of the let's just go deep into our feelings, and that does not land, because these people are incredibly powerful and strong in their spirit and in what they do day to day. So if there's something that can kind of honor the strength of who they are while simultaneously inviting them to take some of the armor off their heart, but in a way that doesn't kind of subtly ask them to throw out their strength, that subtly asks them to not be so powerful. If that can exist at the same time, which is what the horses do, now we're really talking. And I think that a lot of people resonate with that, no matter which side of the coin we're coming from, but first responders especially. So there's something innate as a draw. And this is, of course, not everybody. We're definitely going to have lots of first responders maybe potentially listening who are like, that's not me. I don't want horses. Cool, no problem. But there's a reason why when most people hear about our program, if there's an availability, we don't have problem filling it, because, and traditionally from a population, that people have a really hard time getting them to sign up for anything that has to do with mental health and wellness. Part of that challenge is also the culture that they're living in at work that is quite harmful. A lot of public safety personnel are working in environments that might have a poster on the wall that says that they value mental health, but the actual culture does not, where there's actually tremendous judgment and persecution even for people who are struggling or who are being vulnerable. And so a vast majority of the people who come through here from those backgrounds one of the major traumas that they're dealing with is not actually from the hard call, although of course they're carrying that too. But the main thing that is driving them so often to a place of burnout or post-traumatic stress injury is the culture where there was a sanctuary trauma that has been occurring, where that place of that's supposed to be the sanctuary, is supposed to be home base, it's supposed to be the safe place, that protected space. They go on the hard calls and they come back to their work environment. That's supposed to be the safe place for them. It is so not. And it actually continues to harm them even more because they now not only do they not have a place to process what has happened out on the call, but that's safe or feel like it's okay to have whatever moving through that difficult moment. They don't have that. So it compounds the difficult thing they just experienced. But in addition, they also feel this betrayal because the people who are supposed to be safe and there for them not only are not there for them, but sometimes even making it worse. So all of those things put together makes people armor up even more, makes people lean into the strength even harder. Fair enough. So we need modalities, and horses are not the only one, but they are one of the very powerful modalities to help people in that kind of context learn that their strength is valuable and the horse doesn't want them to let that go. What they're asking them to do is to become more whole. So it's not trading one skill set to be a different kind of person. It's saying, you're amazing the way you are. Let's just make more space for who you are. And the horses have this beautiful way of helping people do that.
It's so interesting that you said that because this counts for so many that armoring up more, right? Fighting strengths with strengths. This is phenomena then let's do from the horrible thing here more and eat even worse as you drink a little and let's drink more and more and more. But this is such an interesting thing that you described, that this is still part of that culture when one would imagine that a cost calculation from the government would realize training one new first responder is crazy expensive. And one should fight everything to have a work-life balance and keep them in the job, right?
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And even when there is investment into things that do support mental health, again, it comes back to culture and how the individual people and especially leadership respond to these kinds of topics. And
I'm such an old person. I know it's better to talk with this guy about Excel sheets than with a human. It's the faster conversation. That's the cost of dropout.
Totally.
Whereas it's education, whereas it's therapy. Here's the triangle. It makes sense, math.
That's right. That's right. And there's more and more research to support that. And we're also seeing more and more change because of it. So it's not to say that we're the same place that we were 20 years ago. It's definitely improved. And there's a lot more room to grow. And that's why we're still seeing the kinds of people coming out of those organizations the way that we are. There's tremendous problem with both recruitment and retention, especially for those reasons. The other piece that I want to mention is that with horse work and horse therapy, there's no trauma talk. Although people might give like a headline, like a chapter title of something that's happened in their life, we're not going into the deep story of something very painful or difficult that's happened, because it's not about that. There's importance to that, working through it with a therapist in a different context for sure, but that's not the main piece of healing that we're considering when it's the horse work. So there's two terms that I'm going to talk about: top down and bottom up. So top-down therapy, it's really about like helping the brain think about stuff that's going into the story, that's training our brain to look at things differently or approach things differently. And that's a top-down. There's value to that, right? We want to train ourselves how to think. We want to revisit the story, create a new story. Maybe we're living in a particular story right now, the narrative we have about our life, and it's so beneficial to do that narrative deep dive with someone and shift the narrative so that we can feel more empowered and more free. Very valuable. And there's parts of that happen here, but we're not going into the deep, painful stories in that top-down way. What we're doing is we're doing a bottom-up approach, which means that we're actually healing from the body up, meaning that it's going to shift how we think because we're actually helping our body do the healing it needs to do. We store a lot of tension and trauma and stress and pain in the body. our body holds a lot of memory, and it has a pattern of how it responds to the stresses of life, especially when it's been patterned because of some big events in childhood or in work or this or that. And so we don't actually have to go into the stories of what happened in childhood or in our adult life to recognize when our body is responding in a certain way that is connected to that trauma. So learning how to be with horses in this very embodied way, we're not like practicing a script with them. If you say this and I'll say this, and then it's really being very physically present with them. And the horses are responding to what's happening in our body, not what we're saying, not what we're just thinking. It's also really what's happening in the body. So as we learn how to shift that in this relational way with the horses, that's where so much of the healing takes place, where we don't have to talk about all the things. And I think that's really important for a lot of people, but especially for the public safety community, because they've had so many traumatic events. So where do you start? And that can be very overwhelming for many people, even if they're already in therapy. And sometimes people who are already in therapy, I've had the comment many times they've been over-therapized. Like there's only so much talking about the trauma we can do until actually it's not that helpful anymore. And so whether it's because it's over-talked about, or maybe it's just too overwhelming to think about starting to talk about it, the horse work can offer this beautiful inroad to healing that bypasses both of those challenges.
You a little bit took my next question away, but I will ask it anyway. Yeah, because I wanted you to give us maybe a couple of minutes, if you can, to just make a mini video of like how this right people arrive, I guess, to make an introduction. First question, is it always like a group of colleagues, or you rather do not like to have colleagues, that you would rather have them individually coming, or specifically want them to come as a group? And then do I see myself after the first day, a lot of men crying, or is it a crying event, or is it more like a body event where we feel and be part of this, and just the healing happens almost like in secret? Is it out loud? Is it in silence? Just a little bit, give us a couple of minutes.
Absolutely. Great question. So when we have groups of people that we're working with on site, and I'll just mention, like, I do other kinds of work as well. I actually take some horse sense, if you will, and I go into organizations. I'll do different like leadership trainings, wellness workshops, that kind of thing, where I'm not actually directly with the horses. So those groups could be much bigger. But when people are actually coming onto the farm to do the horse work, it's always a maximum of 5 people. So 3 to 5 people kind of thing. And then there'll be myself and a therapist. So I'm a coach and facilitator. I'm really the horse professional, and adding different kinds of teaching that are connected to that. And then the therapist is there in case someone is really struggling. And then there's a qualified professional for them as well. So people arrive, and it's a very small group in part because we want to make sure that everyone has enough space and time to share, to talk, to, even though we're not going into the trauma stories, we still want to get to know each other. We still want it to be a very connected experience if people want to lean in that way. And even if people are quiet, that's okay. There's no pressure or necessity for people to say things, but that there's room and space for that to occur if they wanted to. And also, people can't really hide or section off into a smaller group. When we're just a very small, tight, intimate group that way, we're having a whole group experience. We're not having a pieced off experience. So people arrive to the farm. They kind of land in the space. There's some coffee and tea and snacks, and we have this beautiful yurt where people come, and we have our human-to-human time there first. And if it's a full day, I'll talk about a full day experience, because we also do individual sessions, but this is the group kind of full day piece. We have our human part in the morning. So we're going through some group community building agreements first to make sure that we're creating that protected space. This is especially important if we are having people come from like the same workplace. We do have people who come who are all colleagues. I prefer if people are here not knowing each other beforehand, because especially when they're having to then go back into their work environment, I want to make sure people are very safe in that process. And that can be a little trickier, although totally doable. It just requires a little bit more management on our end to make sure that's a safe experience. But really, as long as people are here and they want to be here, it's okay. And for example, we have a group coming on Friday that they're all colleagues, and it's going to be wonderful as long as we talk about that piece to recognize that, hey, you all work together. There's all these other dynamics at play. Let's make sure that it's safe and healthy for everyone while you're here and also when you go back. Okay, long story. we go through those kinds of pieces. We'd also then do some experiences where we're starting to practice tools that help us do a few things. They're helping us learn more about the horses. They're helping us learn more about our bodies, because like what's happening physically in our body. They're helping us land in our body, helping us learn how to regulate and co-regulate, meaning learning how to create more of a sense of calm and ease in the body, which starts with awareness. And then it progresses to actually some skill development for learning some tools that can support us if we're feeling some stress. And so we're doing these things that are preparing us for our horse experiences, which are after lunch. So we have lunch, best part of the day, of course. And then we have our horse time in the afternoon. So the whole afternoon is with the horses. And we have another building for that. It's called an arena. We're sheltered from the wind and from the rain and all the things. And we have one horse join us at a time, and one horse and one person have an experience at a time. And so there's a little bit of preparation for the person before they go in. And again, an opportunity to ground, to get into their body, to do a baseline check-in of what's going on for them. And then they are prepared to go in and spend some time with this horse. And the people who are there, not with the horse, we're all sitting watching in an intentionally supportive way, where we're not commenting, we're not saying anything. I might intervene, I might chat with the person depending on what's going on. I'm going to, of course, be present to what the horse is experiencing too, making sure the experience is safe. So that's my role in a sense. And the person just has this experience where there's no A plus B equals C. It's not like you do this and then you do this and then this is the outcome. It's just exploring with an intention, exploring with a little bit of guidance, but there's no pass or fail. It's a success just by experiencing. And no matter what happens, there's learning. No matter what happens, there's growth opportunity. So the person has their experience. There is 99.9% of the time a clear end point of, okay, they had some kind of progression. I might have helped them, coached them through a little bit of a stuck point. They worked through something. There was some kind of thing that happened with the horse that was clearly showing that there was either connection or just the person had a sense that this was good, or that they were learning something important. And then they come out of the ring and then we talk about it. We talk about it as a group. And it's often just as impactful, if not more impactful, for people watching than it is for the person experiencing. So as we're witnessing these very vulnerable, real moments between person and horse, we're also noticing what's happening in our body, what's coming up, what are we thinking about? Like, how is this informing us about ourselves? How are we inspired by this person, what they just overcame? How are we moved by this whole moment? Surprised by the outcome, shocked by how the horse responded in this way that we think is like impossible for them to respond, and yet here they are doing that. So having those kinds of processing conversations about what just happened with the horse. So that happens after each person's experience. And you're asking about like emotions. Some people will cry, some people will laugh, some people will be like just taking it in and a little bit more quiet. There's not one way.
I'm warning you, if now there's a barn fire outside and you're standing around with hot cocoa, this podcast is once and for all. It sounds so amazing. I guess you guys have been flooded with emails tomorrow. They're all from me.
We would love to welcome you, Philip.
With all kind of different names. John Doe, Harry Miller. I'm calming down. I'm relaxing. I just going to listen to the podcast a couple of times and imagine to be there.
I love that. I'm so glad.
No, this of course, I think we really gave a good picture for everyone to understand. Now, I must, of course, ask a tricky question, because 5 people, 5 horses. Do you secretly give certain people certain horses based on your instinct? Now I must have to ask.
So mostly no.
Oh.
Although we have 5 horses, all 5 don't work on the same day. So we'll bring one horse to the arena, and that one horse and that one person will have a session. And then often the horse will work with 2 or 3 people in the same day. So we may have 2 or 3 horses that join us for that experience. But we don't actually pick the horses. They volunteer. So we don't ever say to the horse, you must work today, you're coming. They say, I want to work today. And so we can really trust that when they show up with us in the arena, that they want to be there. And then the horse, while they're in the arena, may communicate. Like sometimes they'll stare at one person to be like, you're my client right now. Like we ask the people to volunteer who wants to go with this horse at this moment. But sometimes the horse is, I'm voluntelling you, like you've been voluntold by the horse. And so they still can refuse. It's not like we're going to force anyone to do anything. But the horse can sometimes very clearly communicate who they're there to work with. And sometimes there's a sense that people have. The horse is just, yes, I know I'm here to work with this group. And the person's going to know. And there's that sense that, okay, I really feel drawn to this horse. I really want to have my experience now. And sometimes they'll hold back. And then the next horse comes in. They're like, okay, this is me. So there's this fluid synchronicity that happens around how the matches take place, while we also listen to the horse and what they're saying. And that the horse might come into the arena, they work with one client, and then they show us in their body language that they want to be done. So we're like, okay, they're only working with one person. So we bring them back to the field and we bring a new horse over. So it really is very horse-led. There really are partners in this work in a very consensual, mutually respectful way. And I think that's incredibly important for so many reasons, ethically, et cetera, but also for the people to know that whatever is happening in the horse, in the ring with this horse, the horse chose to be there for a reason. There's a real intention around the horse experience from the horse side. So even if the horse seems uninterested, even if the horse seems to maybe be going to sleep and literally having a nap, it's not because, oh, this horse is so they don't want to be here anymore. It's no, this is actually something they're communicating to you for a reason. And I've had many experiences of that. And when people shift, I was like, could we give it the most magical, generous possibility that this horse's behavior is actually connected to something that could offer healing and growth to you? What could that link be? And every time it makes sense.
I have a lot of questions still on my mind, but I think this is such an amazing ending, and I can only ruin it if I ask another question. Because I know that you were looking at me when the horse went and sleeping. So that is exactly how I saw the whole picture in my mind. It is my part. So I think if you don't be so kind for me, let's end it here.
Sure. Do you need a nap?
All the information down there, all the links, everything about the contact. But if you can go through my spam email, good luck.
Great.
Thank you so much. It was a very inspiring podcast, especially a holistic podcast.
I'm so glad.
Much.
Is it okay that I mention one thing, a little promotion to tell people about? It's a free thing. So we have a Saturday morning online wellness community that is free. It still requires a registration. So we get a little information about the people who are joining us for some accountability, making sure it's a safe space. But nonetheless, there's no charge. And what that is, it's called back to grazing. So like horses, they go back to grazing. Maybe something startles them. They're looking around, maybe they run around a bit. And then as they calm down, they go back to eating grass, back to grazing. And so I'm calling it that for us as humans because there's so much in our world that's stressful. And how can we learn to go back to grazing in our own body and our own nervous system? So this is an hour Saturday mornings. If you're in my part of the world, it depends on the time zone, Eastern Standard Time, 8 a.m. And it's just a little bit of an embodiment and guided visualization practice. So I just want to throw that out there too.
We'll put this at the beginning so people don't have to wait until the end of the podcast. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you, Philipp.